So these YouTube tutorials might have failed us as self-taught music producers. I only say this because for the past 10 years, there's this one mistake I continue to see pop up in the projects of incoming students here at Cosmic Academy. And these are students of all different skill levels. You have beginners making this mistake, as are people with 5-10 years of production experience. The problem stems from how they approach processing their sounds. Whether it's inside a synth using the built-in effects, or post-processing with stock or third-party plugins. Your processing chain will be one of the biggest deciding factors on overall sound design and mix quality. And the order in which you use these tools to process your sounds, it matters. It's everything. I want you to listen carefully. I'm about to play the same sound back to back with the same plugins and same processing. The only difference will be the order in which those plugins are being used on the processing chain. Do you see how this will literally make or break your mix? Quality is not luck, so I want to give you the shortcut to the plugin orders that work and those that don't. The first point here is you want to have some intention behind the moves you make. Your signal flows from one plugin to the next. In Ableton, this goes left to right. Logic and FL are top to bottom. I'd originally wanted reverb, delay, and distortion on my synth. The first example has my sound leave the synth and run through a reverb. Then the reverbed synth is going to be affected by the next plugin, distortion, which means the synth and that huge reverb space are all crunching now. Finally, the crunch synth and the crunched reverb are going to run through this delay, which is causing this huge, muddy space to just repeat over itself. So instead, let's just put more thought into this. What if I have the distortion come first to crunch my synth? Then that sound will repeat through my delay, and then the crunched synth and their repetitions will all sit within the space created by reverb. It's the same processing, but this order makes more sense. I'm not crunching the reverb or repeating the reverb through a delay. Those are going to lead to muddy mixes. Let me give you a consistent approach then to think about processing. Look at your processing chain in two parts: the individual sound itself, and then that sound being put into a space or the rest of the mix. So earlier in a chain, you might see things like distortion or saturation to color a sound, EQ to clean up or sculpt, and compression to balance and shape its dynamics. From there, you may want to take that polished sound and run it through modulation effects. Think maybe chorus, phaser, flanger, or you might even want to just skip right to the spatial effects. Think delay and reverb. Don't forget, within these three stages, you still want to be mindful of what's happening to your signal. For example, let's say you cut low end on a sound and then run it through distortion. That distortion may reintroduce low end back to your signal. So if your original intention was no low end, you may have to bring in another EQ after the distortion to get back to that intention. Another important one to think about is delay and reverb. If you have an instrument that's using both, typically delay first, reverb second is the better option. And that's because reverb is typically going to create the space in your mix. And those repetitions that come from delay will happen within your space. If you have reverb first, delay second, then your space is going to repeat. And I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time I was in a space that was repeating. But with that said, you absolutely can break this rule. And you can use delay after reverb if you have shorter reverb times. Think like a short ambient space. Because that reverb is short, it won't repeat over itself when it delays. I want to show you some other ways we can break the rules to create some pretty crazy sounds. But I'm also starting to wonder, did you not notice that I left out a massive part to this? If you're leaving these effects on inside your synth, there's a good chance this is what's destroying your shit. Here's why. The presets you download come with a lot of processing on them, as they should. Think about what the goal of a preset maker is: to make a dope sound that sounds great on its own. So they're typically gonna put reverbs, delays, make it sound huge because they want you to say, "This sound is amazing. I wanna buy more presets from this person." But do you know what the preset maker doesn't give a shit about? Your mix. Nor should they. That's your job. Think about what's gonna happen if you leave those effects like reverb or delay on inside of the synth. Everything we've been talking about is screwed up now. You would typically want your reverb and delay towards the end of the chain, but in this case, now it's first. My recommendation is to just turn them off if you're going to do post-processing outside of the synth, because you can always add them back on your chain where it makes sense at the end. But I know what some of you are also thinking here. When you turn those reverbs and delays off in the preset, the synth just doesn't sound the same anymore. You like the sound of the Serum reverb and delay, and I don't blame you, I do too. So guess what Serum did? They created a drag and drop effects plugin that you can drop anywhere in your chain. So I'll drop it here at the end of my chain, recall the preset, and here are all those same effects. But the difference is I now have the control over where I want to place these Serum effects in my post-processing. All right, I want to stick to my word and now show you another way we could break the rules we just created to make some pretty incredible sounds. To help me on this though, I want to call on a friend who literally taught me everything I'm teaching you. He showed me this specific trick. So I asked him if he could make a quick video message to introduce it. So let's try this out and put a compressor after a reverb. You could do this with anything: synth, piano, vocal, drums. I personally like to exaggerate this by using OTT. Pretty sick, right? My intention was to blow up the space for sound design purposes. That's why I'm okay breaking the rules here. And you can also be creative in how you move these plugins around. But you also need to be in control. Let's refocus here for a second though, because none of this works if you yourself can't hear these things popping up in the mix. So let me show you the fastest way you can improve your ears so they hear everything.